I'm losing a bit more online than I'm comfortable with. Need to get better at this game. Guess it's time to hit training mode and figure out how that all works. What could all of this mean? How is anyone supposed to know how to use this stuff? Those are some fair questions. Training modes have come a long way over the years, but they could certainly do a better job of explaining what you're looking at. We'll cover that in this video, but perhaps controversially, I'm going to suggest that training mode isn't just some chore you do like brushing your teeth.
Training mode is like brushing your teeth.
Okay, it can also be that, but that doesn't mean it has to be that all the time. We're going to quickly cover what all this information means, how to use it to get better at the game, and why training mode can actually be fun, just like any other game mode. If you've been following my other primer videos, I intended to make this video primarily about Skullgirls, but so much of it translates to nearly every other fighting game that I'll be using examples from some other noteworthy fighting games too, like Guilty Gear Strive and Street Fighter 6. Depending on the game you're playing and which options you have turned on, there are probably a bunch of numbers on your screen right now. Find your option for enabling as much attack data as possible, then if it isn't already enabled by default, find the option that sets the opponent to never block. Hit a button. We ought to see how much damage that attack did. Pretty basic stuff. If you're playing most modern fighting games, you'll probably also get some frame data or frame advantage information. As of the time of this recording, Guilty Gear Strive doesn't have this, and it really should, but in those cases where your game doesn't have frame data, there's usually a wiki resource online where you can look up a lot of this same information. So what does this all mean? You'll recall from my previous videos that a frame is one still image drawn to the screen. Fighting games usually run at 60 of these frames per second, so we tend to measure time in frames. You'll see information for the startup, which is how many frames your move has before it does damage to the opponent. You'll also see this number here that will have a plus or minus next to it. This is your frame advantage. Frame advantage tells you who will recover first after an attack is hit or blocked, and it can often be a different amount of advantage in either case. This information tends to be presented from the perspective of the attacker, so if it's plus, it means the attacker recovers first, and if it's minus, it means the defender recovers first. If your training mode is truly blessed, like Skullgirls and Street Fighter 6, you can get a full timeline of all the frames of an attack so you can see where you're vulnerable, where your attack is active and is capable of dealing damage, and, if applicable, where your character is invincible or armored, among other things. Just because your attack is minus, that doesn't mean it's all bad though. If your attack is only a little minus on block, like -2, and your opponent doesn't have an attack that starts up in 2 frames, that means that attack is safe. You can use that attack, and if your opponent blocks it, they'll be unable to counterattack before you're done recovering from that attack, which means that you have time to block their retaliatory strike. If your attack is very minus on block, like -12, and they have an attack that starts up in fewer than 12 frames that will reach you, that means they can punish you, and you will not be able to block in time. We would call this move unsafe. Try to come up with a plan for your offense that's built around moves that are safe on block. Once you're comfortable, you can use the unsafe stuff to punish your opponent's mistakes, in combos, or as a calculated risk. If your move is unsafe, you might have a cancel option that makes it safe by skipping that move's recovery and going right to the attack that you cancel into. For instance, in Skullgirls, Black Dahlia's standing heavy punch is very minus on block and very unsafe, but if you cancel into your grenade launcher and make your opponent block that as well, you're still minus on block, but you're safe. Those are the fundamentals of frame advantage, but remember that mechanics like push block guard cancel in Skullgirls or drive impact and perfect parry in Street Fighter 6 can potentially make your frame advantage irrelevant if you don't respect the way those mechanics can stop your offense. Another rare feature that you can find in the likes of Skullgirls and Killer Instinct is the hitbox and hurtbox display. The hitbox is the part of your character that can actually damage the other character when it hits them. The hurtbox is the part where, if your opponent's attack touches it, you get hurt. At the end of the day, all fighting game interactions come down to hitboxes and hurtboxes overlapping to decide if an attack landed or not. If the game you're playing doesn't have this feature, this is another thing that you can usually look up online on a wiki somewhere, though oftentimes the hitboxes and hurtboxes are intuitive with the way that the character animates. Here's a cool feature in Street Fighter 6. We can see exactly how many frames have gone by while we're giving a specific input. This can be helpful when you're practicing your motion inputs. For instance, we can find out exactly how many frames you have to hold down before Guile is considered charged to use a splash kick. Or we can see just how slowly we can get away with inputting a quarter circle while the game still gives us a fireball. I know you've found some options that put more information on your screen than just this, but these are the most important things you'll find on the display. Hit your buttons and check the ranges that your attacks work at. Look at the startup information to see how fast they come out. The lower the startup, the faster the attack is. See how much damage each move does. You don't have to memorize any of this, of course, but you'll get a feel for most of it, and it will help you answer questions later. Speaking of which, that's how you use training mode to get better. Maybe the first thing people think of when they think of training mode is combo training. Depending on the game, combos may or may not be all that important to your game plan. In Skullgirls, the basic combo that does plenty of damage is light, medium, heavy, special, super. In Guilty Gear Strive, it's slash, heavy, slash, special move. In Street Fighter, it varies from character to character, but it could be something like 2 crouching light punches and the flash kick. You don't need to have big combos right away, and if you're unfamiliar with training modes in general, this is probably all the combo advice you need for the time being, because you've got bigger fish to fry. If you want to use training mode properly to get better at the game, you're finding something that's beating you and looking for the answer. Using the information that we parsed in part 1 of this video, we can find the answers. At this range, what moves do I have that can reach my opponent? Which moves of mine are the fastest? And perhaps most importantly, what can I do about what my opponent is doing to me? That last one is probably going to be where you spend most of your chore time in training mode, and you'll often want to answer that question by starting with your game's replay viewer. For Skullgirls players, I'm sorry, but you'll only be able to do this on PC with an extra launch option. Most games have replay viewers, but if you don't have access to one for the fighting game you're playing, you may be able to rig up a video capture solution. Look at what your opponent did that stumped you. If you're in the replay viewer, you can turn on the input display and see what inputs you need to do to recreate it in training mode. Then go into training mode and use your training mode's record and playback features to recreate the situation. I'll take a quick moment to mention that there's a godlike solution to this problem in the PC version of Guilty Gear XX Accent Core Plus R. I know, that title really rolls off the tongue. You can go into your replay file, find the spot that was giving you trouble, and then take control. From here, you can find whatever answer you were looking for without having to go through the steps to recreate it yourself. It's truly a revelation in the fighting game genre, but unfortunately we don't live in a world where that's a standard feature yet, so we're going to have to solve our problems the old-fashioned way. Recreate the range that your opponent was operating at in the replay. Sometimes the game will allow you to reset at different ranges in the corner, or in Skullgirls and Street Fighter 6's case, even just using a save state. Now you can hit the record button and do whatever it is your opponent did to you. Sometimes the game you're playing will have a way to start the recording after a certain delay, but if not, the convenient way to time this is to just hit record, jump, and then do the inputs for the recording so that you're ready for it when you play it back. Maybe the situation is Soul Bad Guy spamming /. This attack is plus on block, which means that most things you try to respond with are going to lose to whatever Soul does next, because he'll be able to attack before you can. When you play it back, lock the first /, and then see what other options you have for getting out of it, also noting which options specifically do not work. There will also probably be an option in your training mode to reset positions and play back the recording automatically so that you don't have to manually hit the play button every time. Keep experimenting and see what you come up with. If you're getting beat up in matches and you don't understand what you can do about it, then it's time to head to training mode and find those solutions. And yes, if you're dropping your combos, that means you're going to have to go back to training mode and practice them a bit to make sure that they come out right when you use them in a real match. When you're trying to find new combos, make sure that the opponent is set to block after the first attack. If whatever you're doing isn't a true combo, or if you mess it up and drop it, they'll block at their earliest opportunity. I've heard before that you learn a combo 3 times, once in training mode, once against bots, and then again against human opponents. Doing a combo over and over in training mode might work just fine for you, but then when the situation comes up to use it in a match, you need to be able to execute on it automatically without thinking about it too hard and dropping the combo. If you want to see which attacks of yours are safe and unsafe at different ranges, set the opponent to use different moves after blocking your attack. Guilty Gear Strive and Street Fighter 6 have a handy after block feature for this, and in Skullgirls you can set the computer to play back a recording as reversal, and it will automatically shave the empty time in the recording before the attack. You may also want to set up exercises for things like blocking tricky mix-ups. In Guilty Gear, for instance, Chip has a lot of options that he can hit you with after you start blocking his attacks, and you need to be able to react to the option he chose and respond accordingly. Set up a recording for each one in their own slot, and then set playback to random so that you can practice actually responding to each one without knowing what's coming. Another good exercise is practicing your invincible reversals on Wake Up. If your opponent knocks you down, they get to bully you while you're getting up. If they do just about anything besides block, an invincible reversal like a Dragon Punch will beat it. Set the recording to have your opponent knock you down and then use a big attack with a lot of active frames, timed to hit you the moment your character gets up. You'll want to input your reversal so that you finish the input just before your character fully stands up. If you did it right, you should go through their attack and hit them with the reversal without getting hit yourself. So that's all well and good, but this still feels like homework. When does training mode get fun? Alright, so hear me out. At least after you've gotten down the basics of how the game works and you're ready to start learning more advanced techniques, training mode is part score chaser and part puzzle game. When you're trying to learn new combos, your score is going to be how much damage you can do in a single combo, and because training mode will let you tweak every variable of the game, you can have fun with it and just set up some absurd conditions that will never or virtually never happen in a real match. In Guilty Gear, set their risk all the way up and do your biggest combo for that extra risk damage. In Street Fighter, get the fattest punish counter you can and spend all of your drive meter. In Skullgirls, do impossible combos that take more than 5 bars of meter to pull off. Just try to get the most damage you can in one combo. Then the puzzle aspect of it comes in. How can I squeeze more damage out of this combo? If I have enough meter, can I kill the opponent in 2 touches, where a touch is the hit that starts a combo? Can I kill them in 1 touch, which is what we call a touch of death? Can I do it when the first hit is a light attack? Can I do it for 3 bars of meter? Less? In Skullgirls, is there an assist that my other character has that can help me rebuild resources? Is there a good DHC from one character to the next that puts me in an advantageous position or sets me up for even more damage? You can also try making your own setups, where you get an advantageous knockdown, or you're designing a reset where you want your opponent to have as few options as possible. Using the same recording options you would use to find answers on defense, you can see what beats the situation you set up, even if the only answer is to just block it and wait, so that you're prepared for what your opponent can do to counter you. If you've done all of this right, then the answer that they have to respond with on defense is much harder than the thing you did to them on offense. Fighting games are very systems driven by their nature, so finding ways to put those systems together to try to solve puzzles you created for yourself can be immensely satisfying. Between these score chasing and puzzle solving exercises, you may have even learned something really strong that you can take into real matches against real opponents and win some games because of it, which feels great. And hey, maybe this all still sounds like a drag to you. Training mode doesn't exactly have a reputation for being particularly exciting, and maybe I failed to convince you. At the very least, if you've got your eye on getting better, I hope I've shown you how to derive those answers yourself. And if even that still seems like too much work, there's no law requiring you to jump into training mode at all, and you can just play the game without it and have a good time, just like you can ignore any alternate game mode that you don't think is very fun in any other video game. But at least now you can say you know what all of those numbers mean. This brings me to the end of the 3 videos I originally planned. I know it definitely took me longer to work on them than I anticipated, plus some life happened in between to slow me down, but I'm not out of gas yet. If you've got requests for topics you'd like me to cover, feel free to share them in the comments. I'm not committing to a certain number of videos anymore, but if there are more questions that it feels like enough people are asking, and I feel like I can answer them with a good video, I'll try my best to do so. For the next video, I'm aiming to go much more in depth on frame data and all sorts of applications of it that breaks this genre open once you understand it.